Welcome back to Book Break! We are so excited that Macmillan is publishing Grady Hendrix's latest horror novel, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. It's absolutely terrifying. I have read it. I'm a wimp. And
I'm too scared.
It's so good. It's so good, Daisy. You have to read it. Grady Hendrix is such a good and fun horror writer.
Yeah.
All of his books are so different. They all take different topics. We're going to do a whistle-stop tour in this video through a guide to his scariest books, because he is a very, very scary writer, but he also is quite a playful horror writer, which is really fun. And often in his books he's actually covering quite serious feminist topics and turning them into horror, which is really clever. It definitely has the vibes of Get Out, the movie. So Jordan Peele fans, you will love Grady Hendrix. So before we go into a guide to his books, let me just tell you a bit about the latest one, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. So Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is set in the 1970s, and Grady Hendrix does a really good job of making it really feel like it's set in the 70s. But it's set at a home for unwed mothers. So this is a really kind of serious and sad part of history, and I knew about homes for unwed mothers, but I, like a lot of people, really just thought of them as something that happened in Ireland, like the Macmillan laundries is kind of the most famous. But actually these kind of homes existed in the UK and they existed in the US, and really recently, so much more recently than we realise, up to like the 80s, 90s. So this is set in the United States in the 70s, and it's about a teenage girl who is pregnant, and she is sent by her father to this home for unwed mothers and just abandoned there. And that's what happened at these homes. Young women were just sent there, and they had no control over their lives, and they had no control over what happened to their children. Their children were often just taken away from them, sold to other people. They never got to see them again. It was really, really awful. And Grady Hendrix researched this because he has a personal connection, because he had two of his relatives were sent to homes for unwed mothers like these. And so hearing their stories, he was really inspired to write a book. This book is kind of bristling with anger and rage about what happened to the women that were sent to these homes. But also, what's great about it is he decided to write a horror novel that put power back into the female characters' hands. So they're put in this position where power is completely taken away from them, and then Grady Hendrix gives it back. So the book starts when the main character is sent to this home for unwed mothers. She's abandoned there by her father. She meets a bunch of other pregnant teenage characters who all have different stories. Many of them have very, very sad stories about their past, about how they became pregnant, about how they ended up in the home. And together they find a book called How to Be a Groovy Witch, which promises to give them magic powers. And the rest is history. They start using their powers, not always for good, but it's really empowering to read, and yeah, it's just brilliant. Grady Hendrix is such a clever writer, as we're about to tell you by giving you a guide to the rest of his books.
We also have a read-along going on Storygraph if you're interested for Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. So if you're watching this a little bit after, you can join, but if you're watching this in the future, you can join as well, because there are no spoilers and you unlock questions as you go through. So it's really exciting, and it's a nice way to be able to discuss the book with other people who've read it. So if you are interested, we will link it in the description.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So, a guide to Grady Hendrix's scariest books. I'm gonna go back to one of the coolest looking books I've ever seen,
cool.
which is the book Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix, which is set in a haunted IKEA.
Love it.
Legal reasons, it's not actually called IKEA in the book, but it's essentially a haunted IKEA, and the book actually looks like an IKEA catalogue. It's so cool. It's even like the size is right, it's illustrated the whole way through, so it's really fun and clever. But it's about this IKEA-esque shop where weird things keep happening, and so 5 members of staff volunteer. Why would they do this?
I would never do that.
To stay overnight in the shop so they can find out what's happening. Because every time they come in the morning, things have moved, things have been knocked over, things have been destroyed. So they volunteer to spend the night in the shop and see what's happened. And it's a bad idea, I'm gonna tell you, it's a bad idea. It's not like the really fun episode of the OC where they stay overnight at the mall. It's way worse than that. It's really scary.
I feel like that's just a disaster in a horror film and book. If you volunteer, like, I'm sorry,
never volunteer.
That's your problem then.
Yeah, that was a you problem.
Then come on to My Best Friend's Exorcism, which also has an incredible cover. It's set in the 1980s, and we're following a girl called Abby, and her best friend Gretchen. So Abby and Gretchen have become inseparable since Abby's 10th birthday, where she had an ET party and Gretchen was the only one who turned up, and they really, and they struck this bond between them, and they've been inseparable since. So we're following them throughout their teenage years, going to high school, that experience, you know, doing all the things you do when you're a teenager. And they end up at their friend's lake house for like a nice sleepover. It's fun, and then they take some LSD, and things go a little bit wrong. Things go skew-whiff, let's say, because Gretchen goes missing for a few hours in the forest, in the woods. She comes back and she's a little bit different. There's something off about Gretchen. And Abby and her friends are very aware of this, and they're not feeling good. They're like, what happened? Gretchen's like, nothing happened, everything is fine, let's relax. And suddenly Gretchen's behavior turns a little bit erratic, and they think she's been possessed by a demon. Ah! Incredible. What a story. And everything, you know, continues on from there, and no spoilers, but it's a lot. And again, just I feel like Grady Hendrix has such interesting plot lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, recommend that one.
Yeah, really interesting plots, really interesting settings. So we've had 80s, we're gonna go to the 90s for the next book, which is We Sold Our Souls. So this one is about the main character is a woman called Chris, who was the guitarist for a 90s heavy metal band. Ooh. But just when the band was like on the brink of success, their lead singer quit the band, went solo, rocketed to stardom. So then we jump to present day, where Chris is like a night manager at a Best Western, and she's fed up because she never got the life that she wanted, and her ex-bandmate is going on his farewell tour, and he's like had the life that she always dreamt of. So she decides to go and confront him. But it turns out that all those years ago, the secret to his success might be a little bit more supernatural and terrifying than she had really realised. And again, Grady Hendrix like dives into this theme. All of the titles of all of the chapters are song titles, so if you are a music fan, this book is so much fun. And again, let's look at the stunning cover design, because this is designed to look like the cover of Rolling Stone.
So good.
So good. Grady Hendrix like knocks it out of the park every time.
Now, if you're anything like me and you love a vampire, maybe this book will be for you. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. So Patricia is a mother, and she is also a neglected wife. She's kind of at home, very bored with her life. Her children are teenagers having their life. Her husband works all the time, and she's very lonely. And so she ends up being a part of this book club of women, where they get to talk about not only the books, but things in their lives they're unhappy with. And it's just a nice place for her to be surrounded by people who actually care about what she has to say, and she's feeling really happy. Up until the point that Patricia is attacked by an elderly woman named Anne Savage, and after this she meets Anne's nephew, and she's kind of like, that man is suspicious, there is something off about him, and she suspects he's a vampire. Now of course she tells the book club, and the book club are like, what are you on about, vampires don't exist. So nobody believes her in this book club and in general, until she speaks to somebody who used to work for her, and she explains that she thinks that this woman's nephew is a vampire. The woman that used to work for her is then like, this is really suspicious because this man has a white van, and whenever this white van is in the neighborhood, black children go missing or they brutally kill themselves. But it's only when this white van is in the area. The police are refusing to investigate. They are really uninterested, and with the help of the book club, finally Patricia decides that she is going to tackle this problem, not only of the vampires, but of systemic racism and also of the misogyny going on in the town. And it's just a really interesting exploration into the supernatural, but also how closely related these things can be to our own society and reality. And again, Grady Hendrix strikes such a great balance between the two.
That brings us to the Final Girl support group, which is such a fun book, and I really enjoyed reading this for many reasons, but one of them is that this book is very much a tribute to 90s slasher movies, so like I Know What You Did Last Summer, that kind of vibe. And here's a little fact about me in those movies. I've never seen one because I'm so scared and so squeamish.
Yeah,
and so I would like go to sleepovers and everyone would watch them, and I would like I've been in the room like this while people have watched those films. I've like listened to them. I've never actually seen them, but what I would do, because I loved the idea of them, and I hated myself being such a wimp, is I would read like the full Wikipedia plot synopsis,
that's always a good way around it.
Yeah, so I feel like I have lived and breathed those movies, but I've never actually seen one. And the Final Girl support group finally gave him a chance to be involved. It was like the perfect book, was ready for me, because the Final Girl support group has a really fun concept. If you are a fan of 90s slasher movies, you will know that there is a thing called the final girl. There is always the last girl left standing. After everyone else has been killed by the scary murderer, there is always the last woman to survive. And she is called the final girl, and it's a trope. And so, Grady Hendrix has written a book about a final girl support group where all of these final girls who were the last person left standing in a like terrible mass murder, they all go and support each other. But present day, so they're from sort of news stories, like fake news stories, but news stories, each one roughly inspired by a real 90s slasher movie, so there's lots of Easter eggs to look out for. They all, in present day, are going to their support groups and realise that someone is coming to finish them off, because one by one, the final girls start getting taken out. So it's about them like banding together to figure out who is hunting them down and why. And yeah, there's so many references to the 90s slasher movies, and even though I've never seen the movies, I have done my research, so I understood all of the references, so I felt so proud of myself for this one. It's a really, really fun book. And also it's written in a really fun way because Grady Hendrix has written in kind of fake newspaper articles and also blog posts. So it's very much looking at the way that we talk about true crimes. We've got like fake people who are sort of obsessed with different crimes, and I found that very interesting thrown in as well.
And then finally, we have How to Sell a Haunted House. So in the story, Louisa's parents have passed away, and so she has to go back to this small town where she grew up in, to go back to the house that she grew up in, to sell it, basically. And while she's there, her brother's there as well, and they have something going on between them. Like there's this kind of age-old grudge that they just can't get over, like they can't get past it. So you're figuring that out as you realise that maybe the grudge isn't the thing they need to be worried about because of the things happening inside this house. You're grappling with the sibling relationship and dynamic whilst realising that they need to get their act together because there is something off about this house, and it's really scary.
Same can go for all of his books.
Yeah, I'm not saying anymore. I feel like stories about haunted houses, like you just need the bare minimum to know, and it's just going to shock you in the best way.
Yeah, and that also like really plays into what's so fun about Grady Hendrix is like a haunted house novel. That is a type of horror novel.
Yes.
So he like takes different tropes, different like subgenres, and then completely surprises you.
And it's so fun. Like when you hear the plots, you're just like, I need to read that because it's just like nothing that's come before.
Yeah. So that's our whistle-stop guide to Grady Hendrix's scariest novels. He's actually written a lot more than that. So he's got loads, he's got more novels, he's got short stories, he's also written non-fiction. He's written non-fiction kind of about the horror industry. So he's a very, very interesting guy. Check him out. But I think those are the scariest ones. And of course, our favourite that we really want you to read is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. Like Dave said, click the link below to go and join in the read along if you want to chat about it as you go along.
Let us know if you've read any Grady Hendrix, and if you are planning to read them, which one are you most excited about? And hopefully it's Witchcraft.
Yeah, it should be this one.
Girls. Thank you so much for watching Book Break, and we will see you all very soon. Bye!